Um, as an engineer, you get to go really deep into a particular niche or area, which is great and gives you a very strong understanding of that. But at the same time, I started to lose sight about how this small niche fits into the bigger whole. And that's kind of when I felt like I wanted to experience having uh, an opportunity to influence the direction of the product more and see like how it's impacting the people that use it. Thank you, Hima, for having me on the podcast. Like you said, it's been a long time coming, so I really appreciate it. But hello, everyone listening. My name is Rachit. I just completed my bachelor's degree in computer science at UBC. I also did a minor in commerce. And I was fortunate enough to do the co-op program at UBC. And during my time, I did 5 internships, ranging from the first one being a UX research internship in a lab at EPFL in Switzerland, to a couple of software engineering co-ops at local Vancouver companies, to working as a product manager intern at Microsoft for my last internship. So I had a chance to explore the different parts of tech and kind of see for myself which ones I like the most. And for full time, I will be going to Microsoft to work in the Microsoft 365 team as a product manager. So yeah, I'm excited for that. And I was also involved in the PM community locally. So I was involved in Product BC as well as starting UBC's first product management club just to help others learn about the discipline. It's a space I'm really passionate about, and I've grown to and have had the chance to learn a lot about in the past couple of years. So, I'm excited to share a little bit about it as well. So thank you for the opportunity, Hima.
I know you started somewhere else and then made your way to PM, and you kind of dabbled in everything. So just walk us through what you felt about each of those roles that you did.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good question. So yeah, I'll kind of go through the journey from the start in that case. Ever since I was younger, I was always fascinated about tech. So I would watch a lot of tech YouTube videos. I don't know if some of you guys have heard about MKBHD or the classic reviewers and
the Linus Tech Tips and all those guys.
Exactly. Yeah, Linus Tech Tips is based here as well, so that's cool. Fun fact. But yeah, I ended up getting into a lot of those like channels simply because of curiosity. Like I obviously had a computer growing up, and phones started to become a big thing, and I was like, hey, I always was curious about how these products were like, how did the companies decide what to build from hardware to software, like in terms of apps as well. Like Facebook was just coming up. It's like, how do you know what features to add to Facebook? What would be useful for people? So yeah, I started off thinking that, learning how to code and make these things was the way to go. Cause like, I mean, you probably just like my thought process was like, you probably just sit down, come up with an idea and code it out and release it to the world. But as I kind of went deeper in, I realized there's a lot more to just programming. It's there's a lot of stuff like how do you figure out who you're building for, why they would need what you're building, and is it actually useful for them? And that's what fascinated me, is like how do you understand the user really well. So I kind of learned about that in a bit in my first internship at EPFL, which was like a human computer interaction lab, but it was focused on learning technology. And I kind of played the role of both a developer as well as a user researcher because it was a very small team. So I really enjoyed the process of understanding who are the users of this platform. And in this case, it was teachers. And I also got a chance to kind of translate that into technical requirements and then build out a front end, an improved front end to kind of improve the application. So my thought process kind of shifted from like, hey, how do I kind of learn how to make these things, to a more holistic one, which is like, how do you make products that are useful for people? And I decided to kind of go deeper into software engineering immediately after that, just to kind of see what was out there and to deepen my technical knowledge, because I found that it was important to keep learning. And there's so much to learn in tech, you can never know everything. So just like trying to get as much experience as I can. But during that process, kind of like always felt that I wanted to be closer to the product side and, just again, understanding the why behind things. As an engineer, you get to go really deep into a particular niche or area, which is great and gives you a very strong understanding of that. But at the same time, I started to lose sight about how this small niche fits into the bigger whole. And that's kind of when I felt like I wanted to experience having an opportunity to influence the direction of the product more and see like how it's impacting the people that use it. So that's kind of what drew me into finding product management. I kind of talked to PMs there, figured out what they did. I was like, hey, this is cool. Like this is kind of like the first internship part, which I did about like the user research. So they did a lot of that understanding of the customers, understanding of the users, and that kind of stood out to me. And I'm like, okay, cool. This role seems to kind of encompass more of that side. Although I still love programming and I still love creating, I felt that need to be closer to the product. So that's kind of why I decided to kind of explore PM more.
If you are, let's say, to whoever's watching this, if you're a software engineer today, and you know that you want to make this transition to product, walk us through what steps they should be taking leading up to the day where they can actually get start working as a PM somewhere.
Yeah, that's the good old breaking in question, huh? Yeah. It's again, notoriously, this field is very new. So there's a lot of different places that do this differently. There's a lot to unpack here, but if you feel like, so the first thing, if you have a solid, again, going back, if you do a bit of self-reflection, have a solid why you want to switch to product and a solid answer for that question, I feel like you will kind of be more ready to go to the next step. So that would be the first step, probably. Then it would be kind of trying to understand the role. And the way I did it was I talked to a bunch of product managers. Given that if you have some experience as a software engineer, this role is very adjacent to PM. So you'll have a lot of opportunities to talk to PMs, and you probably have a PM that you work with at your company. So you can start by asking them, hey, what's your job like? Can I shadow you for a day or two? Can we have a coffee chat? I want to understand more about the role. And if you're like a student, then kind of backtracking a bit and to your project. So like, I'm assuming that you have kind of done some work with projects in like building stuff in tech, basically. I would encourage focusing on kind of more like what the problem is you were solving and changing it from a project to a product. So kind of like, hey, this is a problem I hypothesized, and can I validate this with data and by talking to the customer that you're targeting? So come up with like a particular user that is your target user, and kind of be able to justify that choice with concrete data. And then focus more on that process of like, how did you come up with the idea? How did you come up with the solution? And then the working prototype is a bonus right there. And there's a lot of resources online right now, fortunately. To start off, I'd probably recommend looking at kind of similar to cracking the coding interview, cracking the PM interview. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, probably. Decode and Conquer by Lewis C. Lin is another book. And he also wrote another book, which I think had a bunch of PM interview questions, which you can just practice. So I personally used even YouTube videos like Exponent. They have a bunch of mock interviews with PMs, and that really helps you get a sense of the kind of questions and how to approach them.
Rashid, I appreciate you taking the time today to just talk about your PM experience. There's a lot of information out there, and it's almost an information overload at this point, which is why I like talking to people like you who've been there, done that, because you get a more human like experience that you can really like look at what people have done and then follow their footsteps essentially. So again, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Hopefully this was helpful to those who are tuning in, and thank you so much for tuning in to the UBC podcast.
Thank you.